You have no idea how it makes me feel to see so many people here today. It's not the politicians who are going to save Canada, it's you.
With the Parti Québécois in power, the party used their publicly funded language police to go around at a furious rate to fine and instigate companies who they deemed as breaking the law in regards to language of commerce. One of these companies was the Lion and the Walrus. The Lion and the Walrus were persecuted for having equal English and French on their outdoor signs. This was brought to court.
The most significant case of all, and still very important, I believe, is the Lion and the Walrus. There you had a little boutique in the Eastern Townships that had put French on one side, English on the other. So there it had been equal, French and English. Shock. So they were persecuted by the language police. Brent Tyler took the case, argued, and here this is very important to understand. Now, almost all the evidence that was put forward to argue that French was threatened was based on research done by the Royal Commission on Bilingualism, Biculturalism, based on the census of 1960. Therefore, they had information from before the Quiet Revolution, and they were saying, on that basis, we decide that French is threatened in Quebec, and therefore it's possible to limit freedom of speech the way it's limited in Quebec, as an exception.
Is there really any difference between Rosa Parks being told that she has to sit at the back of the bus, and when she says, I don't want to sit at the back of the bus, I'm an equal human being, they say to Rosa, what's your problem? You're going to get there just the same. You have to sit at the back. What's the difference between that and telling Gwen Simpson and Wally Hoffman that they have to have their language twice the size, half the size of French on their sign? And the response of the ethnocentric nationalists, what's your problem? English is on your sign. The problem is we're not equal.
The Equality Party of Quebec and other pro-Canadian groups decided to go on the offensive by lobbying municipalities in the province of Quebec to adopt unity resolutions, stating that if Quebec were to secede, the municipalities in question would remain in Canada. The unity resolutions were adopted and passed around 1997 and 1998.
We would go from town to town, asking the mayors of the towns to say, in effect, if Quebec decides to secede and become independent, our town isn't going with them. Our town is remaining in Canada. That was the nature of the resolutions. Some were stronger than others. Some mayors got worried about them and watered them down, and that did happen.
Over 43 municipalities in Quebec and outside passed these resolutions. The resolutions spawned from eastern Quebec right through to central and western parts of the island of Montreal, going right through the Ottawa Valley into Ontario, creating a corridor.
The people were very concerned, and so they came to the first level of democratic institution, which was the town hall. And city after city, you would have the mayor saying, absolutely no. We was, Bay d'Urfé, Pierrefonds, Montreal West, and once they did pass the resolution, there was a lot of flag waving, and I remember the mayor John Sims in Montreal West says, this is the best thing I've ever done. So at first they were afraid, but of course you have to understand, they feel that there's a mob organizing. St. Leonard, we didn't even have to hold a public meeting because they went through it with Bill 22 and they just passed it automatically.
What about threats?
Well, of course there were threats. You had the remnants of the FLQ operating when we would be people would go to their town hall because they wanted to show support for these unity resolutions. It happened in Verdun, happened in Chateauguay. Members of the FLQ, toughs, would stand outside blocking the way. and they would have balaclavas on, like terrorists. I kid you not. These were, of course, they would argue, they just happened to be cold and had ski masks on, I'm sure. And these were sometimes little old ladies who would be coming out with their handbags because they were in favor of Canada, and they were well into their 70s, and they would come up to their town hall expecting to go in peaceably, and there they were confronted by these people with these black balaclavas on, threatening them, and the police did nothing, would permit this. In every other reasonable democracy that I'm aware of, if you're going to demonstrate against people, that's fine, but you go to the other side of the sidewalk. You don't line up in front of the door like you've got to go through, I don't know, a gauntlet of hell in order to get into your democratic institution. That's just not permitted. But it was. And here in the province of Quebec, when we wanted these unity resolutions passed, and these resolutions went actually to the Supreme Court of Canada, and to this day form part of the document that backs up what the judges decided.
After the successful rally on Parliament Hill, Howard Galganov announced the opening of a legitimate retail business that would challenge Bill 86, the law that forced stores in Quebec on having English half the size of French, or French twice as many as all other languages.
The law says, Bill 86 said, that you can have English signs if they're half as many or half the size. So we opened a store called Presque Pure Laine, and every sign was English-French, 50-50. Every sign. People who worked there were perfectly bilingual. This was a direct attack on Bill 86, a law that says that we're allowed to be visible only for a fraction as visible as the majority. And the day before we opened up, I went to the Office de langue française, the language police. Went up there with 4 huge bodyguards, and I served them with an invitation. Tomorrow, we're opening up a store that's going to defy your language law. We're going to break it. You're invited to come down here and bring your language police with you. See you at the store. They never came. Never said a word. They avoided us like the plague because we stood up to them.
What was their excuse? The cultural?
They said it wasn't a real business. We had, it was an incorporated company. Presque Pure Laine was federally incorporated. Presque Pure Laine had a business permit from the city of Montreal, and we collected provincial and federal taxes. If that's not a real business, what is?
His show was it was cutting edge. It exposed politicians, journalists, and pundits who tried to keep the English-speaking or the Canadians in Quebec silent for so many years. Everybody hated Howard. I mean, everybody who was, basically trying to brainwash everybody else in Quebec didn't like him. His show gave hope to people. It motivated Canadians in Quebec to stand up for their rights. He motivated people so much that they would go out in minus 30 degrees Celsius and stand outside of retail stores that refuse to post bilingual signs as the law permitted. Week after week, there'd be rally after rally.
These were all stores that refused to put up bilingual signs, as the law allowed. I didn't ask anyone to go and put up equal signs. I did that with Presque Pure Laine. I was prepared to pay the price. I was prepared, to be charged. I was prepared not to pay the fine. I was prepared to go to jail if I had to. But these guys had all the money in the world. And, so we went in front of these stores. In the case of Bureau en Gros in LaSalle, for example, we went back and back and back again until they finally changed their sign policy and they put up bilingual signs. There was just no way in the world we were going to acquiesce and allow these stores to take our money and not show us respect. It happened like that with every store, whether it was Canadian Tire, Toys R Us, it made no difference. They all put up bilingual signs as the law allowed.
In the fall of 1998, columnist Bill Johnson decided on running for the federally funded and so-called elitist-controlled English rights group Alliance Quebec. With the help of Galganov, on the radio, and other grassroots organizations, Johnson became president.
And in June, on the 23rd, I guess it was, of June, there was a big Saint-Jean-Baptiste parade. And they call it La Fête Nationale, supposedly the feast of all Quebecers, English-speaking as French-speaking. So I decided, well, I've just been elected to represent the English-speaking community. I have to be there. So I applied to, I can't remember, to the organization, said, well, I'm going to be there. Is there some kind of, you know, special arrangement for those who represent associations or organizations or whatever? So the answer came back, no, you're on your own. I mean, there'd been, you know, a VIP circle with police protection and everything else, but I couldn't be in there, even though it was known that the usual ruffians would be out there to do their thing. Then I started getting threats. And then there was quite a bit in the newspapers about this, about the fact that Johnson wants to go there and that this was a provocation. And I kept saying, look, I'm not going to carry anything. I won't carry a flag. I won't carry a sign. I'm just going to be there. Is this the Fête Nationale supported by public funds, or is it not? So we started the parade, and then pretty soon we're getting taunts. But then periodically someone would come in and knock my hat off. They'd spit on me. They threw beer into my face. But you know, the crowd kept getting bigger and the shouts, and there were sort of anti-Semitic shouts because one of the people in the executive who was there, at one point, a flying wedge of Montreal police came in, they grabbed me and just hauled me out of there. And they brought me to a patrol car, they put me in there, they drove me away, and then finally they let me out quite a ways away. Now, I felt that was an outrage because I was simply following my rights. I had done nothing to provoke it. And then in the paper the next day, no support, no sense that, what is this? Is this a society ruled by law? That the ruffians can force their way and the police will help them? In the media, I was the one who was at fault. I'd done everything I possibly could to simply be there as a representative of the English-speaking community, but not even so much as carrying an Alliance Quebec pin or, you know, or a Canadian flag. I mean, that was, you know, someone else in that parade carried a Canadian flag and they were removed by the police. You know, that's a provocation.
Quebec has, or Montreal has a very small Chinatown. It's basically a couple of blocks and end of story, right? But the ethnocentric nationalists of Quebec City decided that Chinese is not a legal language. So Chinese had to be half the size of French. Well, what kind of Chinatown is it without Chinese? Or if the Chinese is so small you can't read it, but at the same time, here comes a language police. And the Chinese community were so divided, and they didn't want to attract any attention to them. They didn't know what to do. It was February the 12th. We showed up in Chinatown with several hundred people, none of whom were Chinese, and we basically put on such a display that it was picked up by Chinese communities all over the world. Hong Kong newspapers were now interested in what's happening in Quebec. This was very embarrassing for Quebec, so guess what? Once again, Quebec backed off. Quebec backed off on everything that we did in contrast or in opposition to their racism. We never lost a fight, not once.
In the fall of 1998, new president of Alliance Quebec, William Johnson, decided to launch a boycott and rally on Eaton's department stores. The reasons? Eaton's continual refusal to post English signs as the law permitted in areas that had a large English-speaking population. The boycott